Welcome back, everybody. My name is Gecko Lacau, and this is Man Bites Retro. And what we do here, every week there's a new voice that brings forward their favorite person in film history, and we present that voice to you. So please stay tuned for the show. Another episode of Man Bites Retro, and today we are going into Return of the King. This is my second favorite movie of all time, and I just it's a phenomenal movie, and I'm joined by two amazing guests today.
I'm Cynthia. I'm Athel Artistry on Instagram. I've been a huge fan of Lord of the Rings since I was very young, and my mother introduced me to the books and the films, and I don't know what else other backstory you need from me, but we also have
Nisha M, your geek mom, also known as Misha T. Mulchin, and co-founder of Diversely Geek, which most of you know. And we have just been exploring how indelible Lord of the Rings as a series, as a written context, as a written work, has influenced my existence and everything about my geekdom, and also my philosophical ethos, as we discovered, and that we all have in common. So,
well, Return of the King has a bunch of iconic scenes in it, and for me in particular, I wanted to give kind of a little what my emotions are during one particular scene, and this is the scene where Gandalf is facing off against the Witch King on his foul beast, but the moment where his staff is broken and his power is shown to be lesser than the Witch King, and their duel, which isn't portrayed in the film, but their internal duel that they face off against each other, that is shown through the eyes of Sir Ian McKellen, and the Witch King wins that battle and destroys that. But very much to the avail of Tolkien and very much to the style of Tolkien, he hears the horns in the deep once again, and the riders of Rohan come over that little mountain range, and in one of the scenes that just completely give me goosebumps every time I see it.
Take this breath.
Right? With that music that swells as soon as all the horses come over and you see the extent of the horses that are mounted on the mountain range. And then my favorite character of Return of the King, Theoden, gives his speech with the ending in death, just screaming death, and riding to what they think will be their infinite death.
That absolute surrender in that moment, and their resolute understanding that this is a sacrifice we're making, whatever can be saved through this sacrifice, we're willing to do it. And
it's true, because they already knew going in that, let's just go back to Helm's Deep. They've already been through Helm's Deep. They've seen essentially what power the side of Sauron has. So literally, if they don't finish this fight, then they're already realized their extinction is inevitable.
But also you see it.
Use the right word.
Yeah,
it's
100%.
Well, and the only reason is because you know how we were discussing earlier that is sort of the right word, because it explains the scale of color that they use. Throughout the entire filming, and what I was saying about that lighting.
That grayscale.
That grayscale with the lighting brilliance that sits behind everything, and it's about those moments you're talking about.
Right.
It's that contrast between the dark and the light, which it's even Gandalf and Pippin mention it, right? When they're having that conversation, and they say, yes, as soon as those storm clouds arrive, that's when the enemy will be upon us, and those lines are just so amazing.
Good. It's so good.
And just that scene where Theoden realizes he comes over that mountain range and he sees the extent of the army that's gathered on Pelennor Fields.
Oh my
god. Bernard Hill, like, he is a phenomenal actor throughout Two Towers, but then in Return of the King, he just makes this huge leap forward, and you see the emotions in every single aspect of his eyes, and that one scene shows everything that he's going through in that moment. He's like, I was afraid that it was going to be death, but I knew now it is death, and this is my infinite doom. Yeah,
it's true.
But I have to do this, and for glory and for
for the red.
Because
sun.
in that moment, when he does that look, you know, where he turns his head to the side, and he just angles it just so. You're like, this is not just the king just bearing the weight of the sure death of his clan. It's the king bearing the weight of the death of a king of a world, and saying, "Oh my God!" So there was no way to have done anything differently, but let's go out with the glory that we can get and do everything we can just to stem the tide.
And that music swell when they charge down that hill. Oh man, I'm not kidding you. Every time I saw that, it's still to this day. I've seen this movie, I would say upwards to at least 60 times.
Oh, good Lord.
If not more. And every time I get goosebumps in that sequence, it gets me.
In the
every
extended
time.
version where you see the end with the ends, that's for me. First of all, I am going to say that I vastly prefer extended version on this because the storytelling and the ability to transition the story arcs through facial contrast is
you don't have that
astounding.
moment.
And we're losing so much of it because they had to cut so much for the film version, theatrical version. But that extended version, my God, what the actors are given license to do in those moments, it's just incredible. Do you want to run down just like a real, hey, this is the story, or we're just going with people knowing the story?
We're going, that's going to be
the easiest
obvious
thing to do. Is
so how about you guys? What is a favorite scene of yours, and describe why it's your favorite scene, honestly.
Wow. So how's that possible to do with this?
Well, the one scene that you go to, that you choose, that it's the first thing, when you mention Return of the King, what's the first thing that pops into your head?
The thing that flashes, I was discussing it with you.
We were discussing it earlier.
And actually after, thankfully, Joe had me being able to look at the commentary, which thank God for that brilliance. That was a very right thing to do. I had always extremely felt very drawn to this decision to start the film the way they did.
Yes.
Where in all of this, and now you're in the final piece, you're in the final, good Lord, I don't even know the final battle, but it's beyond a battle, right?
The last third of the series.
It's the final in the trilogy, but you make a choice to open with a scene that's bright. That's hopeful.
It's true.
It's beautiful. And then you sharply contrast it with death.
Yeah.
And this absolute spiral into paranoia, schizophrenia, and absolute corruption. So, what a brilliant concept to make a decision to contrast again. This is why I said to you, the brilliance I thought of this film has always been the contrast in colorization 100%. And in scaling of light, true. Because, and even in scaling as I went through in the construction of the miniatures to the actual sets.
The bigatures.
Yes. What's it called?
The bigatures.
The bigatures. That thing.
So they actually coined that phrase for this movie because, for example, the Minas Tirith set was actually 2.5 stories high by almost 1 story wide inside of a quarry, a rock quarry.
But then they actually had a bigature, right? Oh my God, okay. That's incredible. So, the scene, which I've only just come to realize is that, so, Fran and Philippa.
Oh, phenomenal job writing.
Oh, Lord. I had no concept that they had so much storytelling license. That Peter made not just the decision to let them do, that they were part of the storytelling and the story writing and the composition, but then they later on became also directors.
Oh yeah, yes. I'm so glad he brought
full
them
directorship,
on.
And he actually stepped out completely to allow to have Fran complete her storytelling arc. And two of the scenes I think that were most relevant, but there are quite a few. But there's three. One is going to be the early scene with Andy Serkis, where we finally, and think about it, we wait till the third film.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't see him at all in the first one, so technically.
Right. So you're correct. But you wait till then to finally ingratiate us to him.
It's true.
They've been ingratiating us, and as fans, we should understand who he is. But my God.
But think about it. We're going through the journey like if we're hobbits. We're going through the journey as if we're the hobbits. So technically, the hobbits don't warm up to him until the end of the second movie.
He's a hobbit.
Well, he's not technically a hobbit.
Technically,
they say that he's a Western folk, which is kind of what the people of Bree are. So he's a river folk.
He's a river folk, but they're from the people of not that he's from Hobbiton, but he is of the same class. Category of people, and he's lived
that
the same
kind of
way.
Weird fine line,
but he lived the same way. They were a little bit bigger, but and obviously they had longer life.
Yes,
because obviously he's longer. But I'm sorry, I'm digressing from the film. We're going back to story arc, and the reason I did that kind of is because in this moment when Philippa and Fran they write this story, they make this decision to open the film with this brightness, this stark contrast with what we'd expect, and it opens. Bam! This is where we are, with them fishing for deagles,
food.
Food, and we watch this exchange, and then we watch them go from these cousins to this battle, and then from the battle into the mania, and from the mania into the corruption. Exactly. That's why I needed that word, because I had to figure out what it was, and I kept thinking, how do I describe Smeagol's movement into Gollum? And it's the ease of corruption.
It's true. Yeah.
It's an ease of corruption in the scene to me. But what we didn't know is that Fran was sick, and she had already gone over the points with Andy. And remember that they were doing a visual cinematography at the time, digital, and correct me, because you guys are better at this than me, to be able to change from prosthetic to digitalization was a really new philosophy, right?
It was.
Technology.
It's incredible.
So they had created the prosthetics from Smeagol into Gollum, but there was a fine line for the transition. So it was up to Andy Serkis to create the back face, the facial structure and construct, to show us the transition,
which was great.
Yeah,
the way that he showed his emotions and everything.
Yeah.
Oh,
it's pretty.
So when I listened to him in the commentary explain it, I was like, "Oh my Lord!" I completely understand, because he wanted to represent the psyche.
Yes, and that is, I think, one of Andy Serkis's the best thing he could have ever brought into Gollum is not just like his extremely adept movements and characterization, but the psychology, because that was the greatest gift he gave to that character.
Yes, he did, and the fact that he directed himself in this scene.
Oh yeah, he's
because Fran was sick.
Extremely talented.
Like,
and I mean, you think about it. Before this, motion capture were not really known actors. They weren't famous actors that did motion capture.
That is a very valid
They were
point.
literally stunt doubles that were able to do the stunts that are needed for motion capture. So this is the first time that an actual professional actor in a mainstream film. Granted, I don't know if ever before this there was a low budget film or anything like that. But for major films, this is the first time that's ever occurred.
Yeah, and I think that was the first time that the public as a whole got introduced into the concept of motion capture. Just because it was prevalent before, but nobody really knew about it until Andy.
No, not at all.
Exactly.
Not until he did what he did. And I think, maybe I'm wrong, but so in these moments, his ability to represent the schizophrenic nature, and then the power, the second scene that goes with it, and for me it felt like it's almost like this fluid movement into the pool scene. And I told you that I felt like the pool, his reflection, when he's he's about to go to the next stage with the journey with Sam and Frodo into the gates to Mordor. Remember that?
Yeah.
And in that night where Gollum overtakes him in his schizophrenic stage of mania.
That's rough.
Yeah, and the representation of using the pool as a mirror.
That was
and knowing that pool was already corrupted, was already poisoned, toxic itself, but that's the reflection that we're seeing. So what we're getting is this representation of the toxicity, but not just toxicity, but this pure, absolute, venomous poison that courses through Smeagol, turning him and transitioning him into Gollum.
Yep.
And you're watching his exchange. Who can do that?
Yeah.
Who can
that
do
is so
that?
incredible. He's
Andy Serkis.
Andy Serkis is phenomenal.
Oh
I mean,
my
that's why he is like the most renowned now for motion capture, because he can actually emote and do proper acting while being stuck in a suit that's limiting. It's very limiting.
You have to just literally just use your mind and creativity and visualization because you have nothing. You barely have a set. Like you really, it's crazy.
Yeah. And then.
Well, he was on set.
When he takes,
he was on set.
He was on set all the time.
True,
because he actually, as we learn, he literally had a lot of input, not just input, in direction in terms of how they staged Gollum to be able to tell that particular story. And both Elijah and Sean were explaining in that particular scene how rough of a scene it was to do, plus another scene that I enjoy very much. But in the moment, the silence that sits behind his conversation. Remember I told you how I feel about silence and how it's used in this film.
It's very dramatic.
Oh, it's used brilliantly in this film. That whole scene where they cut off all sound and it's just
in the battle.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh God. Yeah.
My heart.
Which that was a nice paying homage to Akira Kurosawa.
Oh yes.
There was a lot of homages thrown to very, very prominent directors in these films, and that's one of them. Also, the use of the vertigo shot at the beginning in The Fellowship of the Ring, he uses that too. He uses a lot of really masterful techniques to give you the sense of what you should be feeling throughout the film.
It's interesting that I connected so strongly because I've always connected to Gollum because of the mental health construct, but I don't think it hit me as hard that I had connected in this way. So strange, don't you think? You're talking about a 40-something year journey for me, because remember, I've read the written work to here, and when Andy explained what he did, I was like, oh gosh, you know? I mean,
incredible.
I could do a whole soliloquy just on his choice to do this, and then his choice to drop the stone.
Yeah. And then see Sam.
And then see Sam.
And then you see, So
and then the whole battle begins, because that's where...
Thank you. You got it, because that was what the dropping of the stone was. It was a representation...
Drop mic.
The drop mic.
Yeah,
exactly what it was. That's why you've just shattered this pool of
illusion.
Yeah, it was tranquil. It was reflecting, but now it's just that God.
And the ripples.
The stone and the ripples, and now it's only going... This toxicity is only going to grow.
That's it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of in this film, because even the way that that Faramir is portrayed in this film, he is that child that wants the recognition of his father, and that sense of kind of really longing to be accepted finally. And I think that is so incredible. And if it wasn't for the extended edition,
we would never see it.
We wouldn't see the extent of where it goes at the end.
What is your favorite?
Oh, no, I was just saying, I'm just going to, one more comment, but yeah, honestly, in the books, Faramir was such a good character, an incredible character for me.
He's actually my favorite character.
Yeah, really? That's incredible. He is a very strong character, and you're right, without the extended editions, we wouldn't be able to see a lot of his struggle, his internal struggle that he had in the books.
Yeah.
So yeah, and oh God, when he rides out, and the
with
Citadel.
That posture?
Oh, that was
posture?
So hard. Yeah.
Osgiliath?
So hard.
And when he talks with Gandalf and he says, you're just writing to your doom. Why are you going to sacrifice yourself like that?
But
and he just goes, I have to.
Yeah, exactly. Literally, he does it. He feels like he does it. He has to, just because he has nothing else to lose, nothing else to live for. His father, I don't know. He's done everything he can in his life to please.
And that you don't have to portray it. The book, it's different because a book you can't see a person's eyes. In film, you're able to see an actor portray that role.
Exactly.
And he goes over everything that goes on in the book between him and Boromir.
Oh, yeah.
All seen just through his eyes in that one little sequence.
So crazy. Yeah.
And it's glorious. It's beautiful.
It is, yeah.
That's David Wenham, and I want to call that out because for a character who is so extremely relevant and important to explaining humanity and what happens to us after we deal with war, and not just the war itself, as in I'm going into battle, but the multi layers that come with living war, living in a wartime, and how our families become completely shattered,
torn apart,
and how we have to relearn what it is to define family, to define authority, to define hierarchy, to define responsibility and duty.
It's true.
To me, I feel like that is who he is.
Which is really funny because, I mean, I don't mean to cut you off, but that literally, we're going to like take that literally full circle into what defines family and shattering families, and we're going to bring it right back to the Rohirrim.
Yes, you are. Yes, you
because literally, this whole time, like, I mean, the royal succession of Rohan is falling, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it a lot in Two Towers, of course, but throughout the film, we already knew of Éomer's struggle with I think his younger brother. I believe?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, his younger brother. But then in Two Towers, we see Theodred's death. We see then later Theoden in the battle. He dies, and I mean and within that struggle, like my favorite character in Return of the King is Éowyn, and I mean, going back to the very whenever I think Return of the King, I, like so many people, think of when she essentially just kills the Witch King. Like, that was incredible.
man.
Exactly.
Man.
Which, I mean, but however, that is still one of my favorite scenes, but I think the scene that really just has so much emotional impact for me is the small scene where she's armoring up Mary.
Yes.
Like that, just because there's just so much dynamic in that scene about who she is, who she wants to be, who she's trying to be. And every single time, like, her character is constantly, like, just shut down. Like, and we saw that she can actually wield a sword in Two Towers, but she was never even allowed to fight in Helm's Deep. They were bringing in children, geriatric men, and, this able-bodied woman is never even given a chance. And so that scene when she's suiting up Mary in his armor, and then she sends him off to go get his sword sharpened, and then when she runs into Éomer's just don't encourage him. That's just ridiculous. And she's just like, well, he has every right to fight, and she's actually talking, of course, about herself. We realize this. She's talking about herself. He has every right to fight. And then, Éomer's just like, you will never understand war. Like, I mean, he has trauma. We understand that. It's just, it is true. Like, the way Karl Urban plays Éomer is it's very hardened. It's very really hard to relate to him. Like I always joke with you because I felt like his standard bearer Hama, who has was like barely any lines, has more character and more compassion than Éomer. But but it's very true.
That's
like
so funny.
but it's so
true. It is
so
very
true.
true.
Oh my god!
Extremely
but it's so
true.
that's always cracks me up because I'm like, honestly, like Hama, but yeah, I think that scene is it really, like, I don't know, it really just like hit home.
And it's not that he can't do it, because we've obviously seen him, portray emotionally and characters.
But I don't. Maybe that was just the direction they wanted him to take. I have no idea.
But I mean, imagine when Tolkien wrote that story and included Éomer being basically the savior. So imagine being written like that in the 1930s.
Yeah.
Can you imagine having a female so prominently put in a book?
Oh,
that
incredible!
You mean Éowyn being the savior?
Éowyn, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I was gonna say, well,
no, but no, it was extremely, and honestly, like, there was an article which, however, okay, let me go back to the film. I loved the scene where she takes down the Witch King. However, I was really upset that in the books, when she takes down the Witch King, like just the pure evil that is just emitted from him, like just fells her, and she essentially is unconscious after that encounter. But in the movie, she is felled, but then she kind of gets back up to fight a little bit, and then an orc, I can't remember his name, but the orc captain comes. The orc captain comes to essentially like just finally deal a finishing blow on her. Yeah. And then Aragorn comes in and saves her. Like, what the heck? Like,
why?
She just defeated the Witch King. Why? And then Aragorn, she's no longer the savior. They took away everything she had. So that kind of, I'm not gonna lie, like that is hard.
I don't think that they did. I don't think that because
I don't think it was meant to be like that, but I think I could see where that could be
but that's what we talked about earlier about always having to have the male savior. Yeah. It's not what the story is written as. Yeah. So I was going to comment because you guys both wrote this. It made sense to me. You got it correct. Yeah. He didn't write this gender bias.
No.
This is not a gender bias anthology.
He did not.
Not at all.
It was extremely
because the strongest and the most powerful being in all of Middle Earth was it's Galadriel.
Yeah.
And the power that she wields in these stories, we never see it. And it's something I think that we're going to hopefully get with the Amazon series. But
yes, I can't wait.
Oh yeah, tell me. Oh my god. But you know, relating it back to what you're talking about, it would never have been necessary to do that. Was it just a faux pas on their part that they decided that they needed to make her a damsel in distress for that moment, but when it makes no sense in the story?
However, I think they needed to introduce Aragorn back into the scene and kind of transition over, and that was the only way they could transition over. But when you edit it together and you put it together, you could completely see where it goes completely awry, and it devoids from the message that it should have been.
However, and that, I mean, I'm also looking
between her and Mary.
Yeah, her and Mary. It's true. I understand that it could be video decisions by videography in order to bring this character back in the scene effectively. However, I'm not really sold on how they portrayed Éowyn and Aragorn's interactions on the way, because they made her...
Because that's not the way it was written.
It's
like
not
swooming.
Yeah, they made her very like swooning, and it was very sad because and even when
she wasn't Miranda Otto was not happy with that because she knew that that's not who Éowyn is.
And you're right. I was kind of sad that they wrote it that way. And even when
my biggest dilemma in the whole series is Liv Tyler. She's completely misplaced in the whole movie, and she's completely out of place in my opinion. And it's not a matter of the character. Why is there a woman playing that role? No, it's not about that. It's about she's out of place in the movie. She's, in my opinion, she's not a great actress, and very bad actress, in my opinion. But
not according to the movie anthology. But okay.
But I mean, I really don't like her as an actress, and then putting her in such an important role. If you're going to include that, you put her in such an important role, and it's just like.
I didn't have as much problem with Liv because for me personally, a lot of her roles were played alongside Hugo Weaving, and he kind of like was able to guide her through that. So honestly, I didn't have as much problem with
But you have powerhouses like Miranda Otto and Cate Blanchett, and there's no way you could even match up to that.
Yeah, that's a valid point when you put her up against the other two.
So they talk about it in the commentary about how extremely I don't want to use the word overwhelmed because it's not correct.
No, you're fine.
But how daunted she was by the character of Arwen, and the breadth and the depth of who Arwen actually is, and how difficult it was for her to disengage from being feeling like she had so much responsibility to
so putting that anxiety aside to be able to do it.
And it wasn't until the moment she said that she does the scene where she's leaving for the West, and she has the vision that they're supposed to have the son, that she felt like, okay, this is just, this is me having the love of my life and having this is
so
my existence.
More organic.
Yeah.
So she said she felt more organic. That's what she said in it, and I was like,
Yeah.
well, I guess I could understand that, but.
So you're telling me the Return of the King scene where she embraces him, that was before that, I'm guessing, because that scene was atrocious and it was so awkward.
Yeah.
No, I'm not gonna lie. It might have probably been filmed before that, but
it was really
was
awkward.
a little awkward, especially after the everything that they went to be together, and that's all we got.
It was so awkward. Are you right about that?
I mean, there's a few little qualms that I have with the movie because I'm such a fan of the book.
Oh yeah, incredibly.
But, I mean, this is just little qualms and little nitpicking at things.
So we're nitpicking. But there's a 99.9% of the story, the film has something that's emotionally connective for us.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So it's okay for her for this not to be perfect. We already give you it. But...
And Samwise the Great. That whole sequence that was taken out. I was like, the whole gargoyles, the Watchers, that whole sequence that was taken out, and I really, really wish we would have seen the Watchers, which for anybody that doesn't know, because obviously it's not in the movie, the Watchers were the guardians of the entrance to Minas Morgul. And instead of having a traditional gate, these things actually were enchanted gargoyles that protected the gateway, and only the people that were true of heart and were allowed. Basically, if you've ever seen Neverending Story, the what do you call it, the Sphinx that you used to see there, it's the same exact concept. If you weren't worthy, you would not be able to enter Minas Morgul.
Well, I thought that they were. It's portrayed in animation, just not portrayed here.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's you see them in the scene where Frodo is getting taken over by the ring and he's walking towards the entrance of Minas Morgul.
That's actually the scene I was going to tell you as my next favorite.
Yes, that's incredible.
Because in this scene, again, with the commentary, sometimes you have to, really listen to your instinct. Because my intuition told me that in these moments, they weren't just acting these scenes. That there was so much more... emotional involvement. Like they were actually physically feeling it. But we don't know because we're not on set. And then we realized from the commentary from Elijah that was actually a very, very, very treacherous scene. Because the way that the set was created, so to go back really quickly. So Fran and Philippa discussed with Peter according to the conversation. And to be able to prove scale on size, they used language because they couldn't create every set that they needed to. So what they did is they did some poetic licensing with the language from the book, and they added on language that would drive into our psyche as the viewer, as the listener. This. Oh, okay, there's height here. Oh, okay, there's depth here. Oh, okay, there's danger here. So in the scene where Gollum is going, and this is Andy's brilliance to be directed to do this. Climb, climb, climb. Up, up, up we go.
Yeah, it's genius.
It is genius because it's supposed to lead you to understand the spiraling and the vertigo that goes with that climb. And then climb... Even the intonation was meant to explain that the climbing has to do, and I'm making a motion with my hand, but that the climbing had to do with this, that waves and that movement from it. I was like, "What? Are you kidding me? You did all of that in this scene with language?"
Yeah.
And the pounding of the horde as they were marching out with the Witch
King. That was
King.
So rough.
That was also supposed to represent the threat and the pounding on the ground and that vibration that they had to climb against to get up.
It's so incredible.
And you're like,
and that was the first time we saw the true crazy power and scale of the army of Sauron, because that was the first time we saw the what were the elephants? The
Oliphants.
The Oliphants. There you go. Yeah, that was the first time we saw the Oliphants, which was incredible. I mean, and Mordor trolls are bigger than cave trolls.
Yes, they are.
So, that's why it's we had not seen that scale
yet. We had nothing
Oh.
until that moment. And they made a decision with the coloring. Again, I will keep bringing it back with the blue and the blacks. But then the only time we see the green is when the Witch King rises, and and we see the crystals raising the color.
That was beautiful.
And I'm like, okay, because the Witch King's power is almost second to none, except for Galadriel.
Yeah.
Who'd already passed her test, so therefore she'd already gone into that next phase of power.
Yeah.
Which, well, we know that. Most people don't know that. That is the depth of that power. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
That's what you're representing with that Rise of the Green. I'm like, come on.
And the power of the ring that he has currently at that moment is...
And that's why he was being drawn across the bridge. But the ease of walking across the bridge, like you said, was not for him. So Sam had to draw him back from it.
Exactly. That was incredible.
And that is where you know for a fact that Sam is never tempted.
Which is incredible. Like, just...
Never tempted.
Which, in the book... In the book, technically, he's tempted, but in the movie, the way they cut out the scenes, it works well.
Yeah, it wasn't in a bad
way. The temptation
it wasn't about that.
It wasn't about power.
It was always nurturing. It was always a nurturing sense.
There you go.
And that is the incredible power of Sam.
That's the incredible power of the hobbits.
There you go. Yeah, the hobbits.
It's a pure mind. It's innocence. That sense of innocence that Tolkien wanted. He wanted to portray innocence as being the saviors of humanity.
Who believes in them? Who believes in them?
Nobody had believed in them before that. Well, Gandalf. Gandalf believed in them.
But I feel he manipulates them.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, I mean, Gandalf, I feel, manipulates everyone to some extent.
That would be correct.
Well, that's what his role is.
And that's part of his role until he actually becomes the White Wizard. And I wonder if he's still like that. I agree. I think that Aragorn is one of the only beings who actually sees their truth.
Yeah. But then again, he's not manipulated by the social norms and all that stuff because he was brought up by what do you call it, Galadriel and oh my god, I blanked. Yes, Elrond. I blanked out on his name.
Yeah, no, you're right. No, you're very correct in that. Yes. So maybe he had already been raised as I think we knew this already because in the Tale of Men, where they didn't. There wasn't a distinguishment made between classes and clans, like they believed in everyone in the original folklore anyway. But I think that
Numenorians were the Numenorian king line was supposed to allow for everybody to be accepted into society if you're human. Period, no matter what you are. And that was the whole reason that the Numenor culture was such a prominent thing, which you could kind of see the parallels between Numenor and the fall of Atlantis. It's very similar. It got sunk into the ocean, very high culture, and most of our societies are drawn from Atlantis.
So do you feel like they bring it into the film?
They do. Oh, 100%. Aragorn, from the moment that you meet him as Strider, he shows this kind of appreciation of anybody and everybody. No matter who you are.
Mean, you know how we talked about how Viggo ended up with the role? Do you want to talk about that? I mean, because I think it's extremely important that he ends up with this role, and then in this film.
Oh yeah, I mean, I only know bits and pieces of it, but yeah, it wasn't originally his role. Like they had cast somebody already, and then it was like really they were literally so close to production that suddenly they had to recast, and so they called it Viggo. Probably 2 weeks. I don't know. It was like really short notice, but yeah, like within that time, he was really daunted, but he was like, I accepted the role. Started literally reading the books and the lore on the plane to New Zealand. So, I mean, he had a lot to live up to, but it was just his incredible dedication. And just, if they had anybody else in that role that didn't have that level of dedication to just his innocence, craft.
I think, as to the role itself.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, a lot of the whole thing is... Viggo Mortensen is a phenomenal actor.
Oh yeah, he is.
Not only that, he's one of those people that he could fall completely into the role and take on any situation and give that personable feel to it. Yeah. Where it's much like Bernard Hill. You could see in his eyes the pain and suffering that he's endured for these last 80 years of life that he's lived through, and you could tell the weight on his shoulders already. Of what he has to endure because he knows he is the one that has to claim the throne. When he doesn't really care to. He wants a humble life.
Yeah, he never really wanted it. Yeah.
But even in the books, they kind of, at the moment that he leaves the what do you call it, the council and everything, he is the king in his eyes. Which that's not portrayed in the movie well, but he is still struggling with that. But if you don't show that struggle, then you don't see how long it actually takes him to feel.
Yeah,
how long it takes him.
You're right.
It takes him a very long time.
Yes, very long
time.
Yeah. It's like, the Bible. There's Jesus doesn't just go into Jesus.
Yeah.
He took 20 years, 30 years of his life before he realized, oh, I gotta do this.
and how, but yeah, and then when Aragorn is talking to Eowyn, 87 years. Yeah. 87 years he's been alive. So yeah, he had a long time. But I remember that. That's incredible.
So yeah, overall, what's another scene another thing that you wanted to bring up about this movie so we could wrap up?
Oh goodness.
Because there's so much we could talk about.
There's just so much to talk about, and if you notice, we're not technically talking about this film itself per se. I think that there was a scene that I was talking about earlier with you guys, where they find Merry and Pippin in Isengard.
Yes.
After the fall of Isengard, where Saruman is on top of the citadel.
Yes.
That scene.
Yeah.
So again, when I keep talking about contrasts and hues and construct and facial structure, and what brilliance it is, you have Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and now the White Wizard, right?
Yeah.
Riding in to Isengard, and everything is flooded in this sheer destruction, and the Ents are here on this side, which we know they're there, because Treebeard is there, and we look at the pure toxicity of what's there now, and this pure destruction, and you have Saruman standing on the citadel, and over here, happy and joyous.
Yeah,
even though they had just been literally through hell and back.
Yeah, they're just having a good time.
Pure sheer
grabbing
terror
all the food that
they're just eating and just having
they found the pipe weed. They're
having a good time. They're having the best time ever, and it was purposeful.
It was
because they were contrasting the worry that was on that's here, that destruction that we see here, and here are these two faces.
Salted pork.
Purely enjoying the salted pork and the bread. You should really try this. It's so good.
It's so incredible.
Salted pork.
And we look at it, and that's innocence. So in the commentary, we understand that it's written to portray innocence.
It's very true. And I mean, we can also just harken that back to, there were so many scenes that essentially just encroach upon the innocence of these characters. And one very strong scene for me was honestly in the Great Hall with Denethor and Pippin, when he asks him to sing. And even while he's singing this really beautiful song, Denethor is just sitting there visually just tearing apart this meal. Like, it is just this very strong dichotomy between, this destruction and then this just very creation. It's
it's brilliant scene.
Beautiful.
And it's one of those scenes that if it's not handled well, you could see this being like super, super cheesy and god awful.
It could have been awkward, but it was very just emotionally.
The decision by John Noble to have the food literally just ripping down the chins,
ripping out,
and he's portraying the character as one who's completely not just indulgent and overindulgent.
He's devoid of just
any connection and any humanity at this point.
Exactly,
and drawing that connection with Sauron, with the Palantir and all that stuff that's already been drawing the conclusion to, and the corruption of humans.
Corruption. That is the biggest
and
part.
And we are watching this silence as they ride into Osgiliath. As we listen to those horse hooves
we know
beating on the ground, and that's what we
Faramir's get right at the helm
with that beautiful
that is one of the hardest scenes.
And your heart, and I'm here sitting here, and all of us, our hearts are hurting. Right
now.
We're
all sitting here,
and yet we're not even watching it, but we know
we're like visualizing everything that's happening,
every bit of it, and the face, and the movement, and the construct. And so in those moments, during those scenes, and it was interesting because I yelled and screamed at the kids in the great, huge way, my nerd self.
Yeah.
Because I was watching the commentary, and during the scenes with Pippin, and where I explained that during this time you also have them crossing the bridge, because remember they're happening almost simultaneously, because neither knows what's happening, right? It is in that moment Elijah Wood said that he realized how critical Pippin was to the entire story.
Which is so funny because at the very beginning,
and I was like,
he was, nobody gave him any credit. He was the butt of every joke. Yeah, but finally, everyone kind of, I don't know, everything kind of came full circle.
So I have told them from the beginning of me this story that Pippin is literally the critical pawn or piece or whatever you want to call him for everything.
Not Sam.
No, Sam. But yet without Pippin and Pippin's innocence, and I'm going to tie it in right now, without his innocence and his absolute purity of heart.
Yeah.
Okay?
He was the most innocent out of all of them.
All of them. And he never lets himself be marred by it. And in that, yes, he makes his mistakes. He's foolish and he's silly.
He's
a child. Children
but
make
he's
mistakes.
still childish.
Yeah.
But at no point does he ever not charge into battle. At no point does he
true.
ever betray anyone.
On the back of
At
the horse.
no point does he not have the back of anyone.
That's
At
true.
no point does he wither back and say, "I'm not going to do this. This is not my
true.
role."
Yep.
He always,
He does it with pure and absolute duty and responsibility and
there
love.
there was a conviction there.
The only reason
every
they were able to look into the eye of
Yeah.
Sauron was
They
because why? He was the only one who could actually hold the orb.
It was so crazy.
He was the only one who could do it.
Not only that, if it wasn't for that, they wouldn't have attacked Minas Tirith. So
You're right.
they would have been looking for Frodo.
You're right though. Bringing it back, Pippin, like that is such an incredible character when you break it down like that. Like nobody really.
And Gandalf was supposed to leave, and he was like, "You can't leave. You gotta do this.
Yeah.
We can't walk away from this." And okay, cool. Let's stay.
Yeah.
Let's do this thing.
Yeah.
And then they have to find them, and then when the mercenaries arrive, and you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, well they would never have known because the connection they had to go to Osgiliath, or for all of them to find each other if they weren't there in that moment.
Yeah.
So you have to think about this.
Yeah.
No matter what, it's the pure, absolute, hearty.
Yeah, they're the center of the story.
And it's all four of them.
Yeah.
But it's not. And I wonder how many people. They're hardy folk.
Yeah.
They're hardy folk.
It's true.
I don't know how many people don't understand.
Oh, but it's glorious, the whole story that
Pippin
happens afterwards.
Yeah.
The whole story that happens afterwards, they actually become members and actually citizens of Gondor.
Yes. That was
they
incredible.
actually go back, and that's where they die.
Council members.
Yeah.
They actually die in the halls, and they are actually buried with the kings.
Yes, they are.
That was incredible.
Don't make me cry.
Yeah, I know.
Kill me right now.
That was, I think, the most incredible. Once again, like bringing it full circle. That was incredible. The fact that they honored them like that. They, a race that most people didn't really even know about or like existed, but then God.
And how poignant is that in society nowadays? How many people are ostracized and kept away, and this film kind of gives a voice to people like that. Maybe that's why we connect to this type of fandom and this type of movie, book, whatever the case is.
Undoubtedly.
And we see that connection in ourselves. We're like, we're the nerds, quote unquote, the dorks, the this and that and the other. Yeah. But honestly,
but without this, life wouldn't be like we have it today.
Exactly.
It's true.
We would have no hope. We would have no belief. We'd have no imagination or dreaming. It is from these minds. Which I am very happy to always tell everyone. I'm a science geek nerd. I own it, and it's what it is. But it is through these minds that we're able to advance and progress.
Yep.
Yes.
And to connect and to belong to each other and create social exchange. Without it, it wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
I just I know we're closing out, and one of the very last things that I know we wanted to talk about, as the three of us agreed on, was the last scenes of the battle as they're being surrounded.
Yeah.
So, and why we think that is a social metaphor.
I think that it is wonderful because at one point in life, you always see that you are literally just one dark event after another, after another, one trial, tribulation that comes to you, and you are literally being surrounded by darkness. And the only way that you could go and handle it is running forward.
Yeah.
Giving that battle cry and go.
Yeah, it's
that Aragorn
true.
does. That he literally just says, F it all and run into it.
This is why he's the king. So.
Yeah, right?
that whip around that
was
Viggo
so
does.
hard with the
like,
cape. He has the
and the eyes.
Oh my
like
God.
that's how many times have you been tempted to fall into darkness? How many times have you been tempted to go into depression and all these things, and then you turn around and say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stand my ground and run forward.
Yeah, it's very inspirational. I think.
So in those scenes, in those moments, I felt like there was the storytelling is at its pinnacle because they're surrounded. And the grayscale is extremely amped up, and we see the darkness, and we see the shadows here, and we hear the lumbersome steps, and tremors
the army,
of the army and the orcs, right? Right?
Yes.
And here we have on the side their decision to band together and to form this circle.
Yeah.
With Mordor being the only bright light you have behind you.
Yeah.
And the vastness of desolation.
And that's honestly a symbolism. It's a symbolism for life in every aspect. When you face that trial and tribulation, you're seeing the darkness. And
that's true.
What are you going to do? You're going to give into the temptation or not?
Yeah, because honestly, at that point, that is literally, you can't go any lower than facing the entirety of the army of Sauron. You can't go any lower than that. So literally, the only place they could go was forward, up.
Yeah.
Or die.
Yeah, it's true.
And
that's
not
that is
the
hardest part is to die. But they were seeing their death in that.
And it wasn't about a literal death. So please bear with me on this point. I don't want anyone to think that that's the other side of depression.
Yeah,
it's the other side of we have to be willing to disengage and to allow our fears and our pain and our sorrow to fall away from us in that moment, and we take that stand. So we let that die.
Yeah.
Not the humanity that is us, as human as us, as beings. And we still have the ability to still keep going and keep fighting because we don't know.
And that was very poignant, the fact that it was Aragorn, a human. We are humans standing up to this. And that is such a powerful message.
It wasn't with the help of the dwarves. It wasn't with the help of the elves, other than one or two.
But it was Gondor and still was
Rohan.
Rohan. Yeah,
Rohan.
Gondor and Rohan. Because it was man. Well, they started this. I mean, come on, they started this.
It was man. Man began this.
Man has to end it.
And
War. Come on.
Yeah, tell me about it. And how about the moment that the pure silence guys?
When the tower collapses.
When the tower collapses.
When Barad-dûr collapses.
When Barad-dûr collapses and they pan over to Merry, and the only two things you see is him say what? In pure absolute joy and light, Frodo!
Yeah, Frodo.
And within 30 seconds, Frodo.
Yeah.
Because there's a juxtaposition of the success and then the loss.
Yeah, you're very right about that.
That's incredible.
It was the success, but then there was a moment of reflection, and then that's where we get the from. Yeah.
And then the eruption where everybody's like, "Oh."
That too.
Exactly, and you see it. You see it as a breath.
Everybody,
because collectively they all go.
Yeah, you're right.
And you're like,
they feel like they can finally breathe again.
It was a collective inhalation and exhalation. Isn't that crazy to see that visually represented in that way?
Really incredible. But yeah,
it really was an incredible, and that shows you how poignant this film is, and this is why it's my second favorite film of all time. It is honestly one of the biggest franchises and one of my favorite fandoms. Change. It is my favorite fandom of all time, 100%, and it is probably the one that got me started on this whole thing. And honestly, I love this discussion.
Yeah,
thank you guys,
this was
Cynthia and Nisha.
Incredible discussion. Thank you guys so much for bringing me on.
I think we could keep going, and there's just
100%.
And the thing is, you need to know is that we have these discussions, and it's not like they're not pre-scripted. We allow ourselves to just really feel in the moment.
Yeah.
And these revelations are true revelations
they
to
really
us
are,
as we sit
many
here.
Times.
So
it's true.
You know, and that's the beauty of us being such absolute pure fans.
Yeah.
Is that it's life changing, I think, for me, and it's philosophically changing and moving and supportive, because you know, I needed to take that collective breath.
Always.
You know, and to remember that in that moment that Tolkien gives us a perfect representation of how we can be in that battle. Feel like we're at the very depth and there's nowhere to go but to take the breath and to just go ahead and forge ahead, and there may be destruction around you, but there's a success, and there's whatever that win is still there. And
yes, it is.
I think that, like you said, it is my favorite fandom, and everyone knows I'm a Whovian, and it's there for me without a question. Yeah. But this is indelible to my existence as a person.
Yeah.
100%.
100%.
And honestly, this was great. And that's the other thing. That's what we aim to do here on Man Bites Retro is we bring fans. That means you, the ones that are listening to this is your voice that you could bring on here. If you have any particular fandom, any particular movie, actor, actress, director, anybody in film history that you love, appreciate, and want to have a conversation about, message us through manbitesfilm.com and we'll bring you on. It doesn't need to, you don't need to be a personality to be on this show. No, you have a conversation. All three of us are just fans. That's all we are.
It's true.
Yeah, well, actually really important to our message that everyone understands how relevant they are to the conversation. Yeah. That each of us has the ability to change something for the better. So we are all personalities.
Everybody has a personality.
That's it. And very important in the mix of everything. So
yeah, but thank you guys honestly for joining us. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Nisha, for joining us.
Louise.
And we'll see you guys for the next episode, which we'll be doing my third favorite film. And you'll find out soon what that is.